Our topic here today is, can you see that, Mike? New child or grandchild? Do you have a new child recently? Did you have a second child? Do you have a new grandchild? What are the critical planning steps that you have to take? And that's the focus of today's talk. I'm Mark Gilfix. I'm here with Michael Gilfix. We're a multi-generational planning team, and we're dealing with these issues in our own family and for you. And does this strike a chord? Did you just have a first child or a second child? Did you just have a new grandchild? Your first, your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth? You need to be sure that your plan is up to date. You can't just sit back and say, oh, I did something a few years ago, I'm good. You need to make updates. Anytime you have a new child or a new grandchild, it's a good time to revisit your plan. There's steps you have to take, and that's what this is about. We're going to go through it step by step, the most important steps. This isn't everything, but we're going to go through the key steps you need to understand and to take to protect your assets for your kids, your grandkids, to help them out, to make sure that you're just in the right place. Because this is about providing them with an abundant life. And what are the specifics of what we're going to cover here today? Well, we're going to go through 4 specific critical steps all new parents must take when they have a new child, especially that first child. Like, that's the biggest decision point where you have to take these 4 steps. We're going to go through what those 4 steps are. If you're a new grandparent, what are the steps that you have to take? And many people here might be thinking that, you had your first grandchild, or what if you have another grandchild? What are the steps you have to take? How can you help out your children and grandchildren in that case? What are the really powerful ways? Topic 3, how can you protect assets for your children and grandchildren? What are the powerful ways you can protect your children from divorce and lawsuits and even future estate taxes? And how can that extend for multiple generations? What if there's a special needs or a disability issue? What can you do to protect your child or your grandchildren, very importantly? I want to talk briefly about financial planning issues, how you need to rethink that and the steps you need to take to make sure your legal and financial planning is integrated, how to take action. What can you actually do to put this all into place? And how can you make sure that you're not caught without a plan or left in a really bad spot? That's what this is about. We always have to point out this is for educational purposes only. It's not legal advice. To give you legal advice, we have to work with you directly. So don't try this at home. Don't do this without expert help. That's what we're here for. Easy to find us if you want our help with it. But a lot to cover, but it's so important if you have a child or a grandchild, especially if you haven't addressed this yet. Really quickly about our firm, for those of you who don't know us, we are Gilfix and the Pole Associates. We are national leaders in the fields of elder law and estate planning and special needs planning. 40 years based in Palo Alto, though we serve clients throughout the state of California. We're a multi-generational team. We have attorneys in their early 30s all the way up to their 70s. And we're very proud of that. We've served people from San Diego all the way up to Wairika. So if you're in California, we can help you. And our goal is to provide extraordinary value, peace of mind, and return on investment. We think about these issues night and day. We've been featured in the national media. We write books about this. So we're very proud of our heritage, and we always welcome the chance to serve new families. So what is this about? This is a photo of
Here
Mike.
we are.
Yeah, Mike, my mom, Myra, and their new grandchild, Miles Gerson Gilfix West. Miles, there's more to his name, but Miles, he's awesome. He's amazing. Your first grandchild. Now, the focus here, though, for this section, and we're going to circle back to grandparents, and Mike's going to lead us through that section. What if you just had a child, or did you just have a child, or did you just have a second child? 4 steps that you absolutely need to take. I'm going to lead you through what these 4 steps are. You just had a child, and again, if you are watching this and you just had a child, this is crucial. If there's someone you know who needs to know this, send this video to them. So I would have to say, first, if you just had a child, congratulations. What are the 4 critical steps that you have to take? Well, I go through them here. First, you have to be covered. You need to have your own estate plan. Do you have a living trust? Or if you have a very small estate, you're just getting started, maybe just a will, but really a living trust is what you need. Do you have durable powers of attorney for finance? Do you have advanced directives? Because if mom and dad aren't covered, the kids aren't covered. If you're incapacitated, who can step in to take care of medical or financial decisions for you? You need to make sure that you name people, again, in your living trust, power of attorney, advanced directive. We have plenty of other videos that go into the details of what those documents are, but you need to set that up. And if you haven't set it up yet, do it right now. If you already did it before you had a kid, you need to revisit it. Why? Because you need to make sure the kid's covered. So we need to look at how can you protect assets for your child. I'm going to go through that in just a moment. The ways that you can leave assets in a way that they're not exposed to bad actors, to a dumb teenager, or other bad things, and to protect your child if they have special issues. You, of course, so that's 2, protecting assets for your kid. You need to think through how are assets going to go to them. 3, you need guardian nominations. Of course, you need to think through who would you want to step in if you can't manage for your child, or if you're out of it, or if you pass away. Who's going to step in and take care of your child? You need to think that through. Financial planning. We need to rethink your financial plan. Do you have the right plan? Have you thought about these issues? So we need to revisit that. So again, the 4 key steps, you need to make sure your estate plan is up to date, your living trust, your durable power of attorney, your advance directive. Because if mom and dad aren't covered, nobody's covered. How's your kid going to be taken care of if you're out of it? 2, you need to think through. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and before leaving this topic, I just really want to emphasize something that I think is increasingly important. We're hearing more and more and more about ChatGPT and AI and the services online. You just have to keep in mind that if this kind of planning is done properly, it's not a matter of filling out a simple form, power of attorney. The heart and soul of what we do is counseling. It's really getting to know you and really knowing your individual circumstance. And I can't tell you how many times we have seen simple documents because the planner or the non-planner thought you were vanilla, and a plan was put together that was inappropriate, too simple, whatever, just not wrong for some reason. So even if you don't see us, you see an experienced attorney who understands these issues, and don't fall into this AI trap where it won't cost me anything. What could go wrong? Just a big caveat. We're increasingly worried about that.
And I think that's also important because a lot of our clients are really concerned. All of us are concerned about, is my job going to go away? Is my kid going to have a way of making a living if artificial intelligence takes over? Well, then you have to think about how you're going to protect assets for your kids and provide them with at least some financial safety net. We're going to some very uncertain and scary times. So that goes, I think that's a nice segue to thinking about how to protect assets for your kids. We actually had a good question from Natalie. And the question is, we're going to talk a lot about the importance of integrated legal and financial planning. And Natalie asked, do we have any recommendations or partnerships with financial advisory firms? And yes, we are building that. So reach out to us. We are building some select partnerships for integrated financial and legal services. So definitely contact us and we can certainly help you, Natalie. So protecting assets for the next generation, let's talk about that. So if you just had a child and you want to make sure that that they're protected, what can you do, or how do we think about this? So I'm going to share this slide here. So I think of this in like 4 tiers. So we talked about the 4 steps you need to take to protect a child and make sure that you're in a good place. How do you protect assets for your child? Well, I think the very bare minimum would be an age restriction. So this is why we're not really big fans of very simplistic documents, because if you just have a document that says, hey, everything to my kids when I pass away, if they are over the age of 18, they're going to get all that money right away. No protections, no third party helping them, no smart advisor who has the right to say no if they want to make a bad decision. So the very least, you want to say, hey, look, if something happens to me before my child is 25 or 30 or 35, my assets will be overseen by a trustee. And maybe it's just your living trust extends after you're gone to make sure that your child's inheritance is overseen by someone, maybe with some money going out to them at different ages. And that's fine. That's better than nothing. Much, much more powerful would be taking steps to create a dynasty trust or a family protection trust. And you don't need to be ultra high net worth to do this. We have a separate webinar called What is a Dynasty Trust on this. And our version of dynasty trust are family protection trust. But here, you would not leave assets directly to your child. You would set up a family protection trust. If you have 2 kids, you'd set up 2 family protection trusts. And you would do that for 3 primary reasons. And again, we have other webinars, other videos about this. But if you set up the right type of dynasty trust for your child, if they are under an age that you don't feel comfortable with, you have a third party who oversees it for them. But there's 3 big other protections. So 1, if they ever get divorced in the future, assets you leave them are separate and not reachable in a divorce settlement if it's properly managed. If they inherit assets directly and commingle them, a huge chunk of what they inherit could be lost. 2, if they're sued, assets inherited directly, 0 protections. If it's in one of these trusts, there's a barrier. So nothing's 100%, but it's a very tough barrier to break through. So you're providing lawsuit protection, and really powerfully, State tax protection. So right now you can leave $12.92 million per person to the next generation without any estate taxes. It's a big number, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. 2026, it's set to drop by 50%, the exemption that's protected from estate taxes. Anything over that is taxed at 40%. In the future, the exemption could drop dramatically. We don't know what it'll hold, but keep in mind, if you leave assets in a protected way for your child, hopefully they'll grow during your child's life. A family protection trust can hold real estate, stock, mutual funds, and hopefully, even if it's used to support your child, it grows and grows and grows during their life. So depending on how much is in that trust, with protections from lawsuits and divorce and other things, when your child passes away, it could be double or triple what you leave them. So you might think, I'm not leaving my kid that much. I have a house, that's it. $1 million or $2 million that goes to your child. Over time, they can grow 4 million, 6 million, 8 million. When they pass away, if it's in one of these trusts and they have kids, and it's where grandkids come in, it should be untouched by estate taxes. Whereas if it's directly to them, whatever estate tax laws are in 20, 30 years, who knows what they'll be, a huge chunk could be lost to estate tax exposure. Now, another issue. So if you have a child without a disability, or grandchildren without disabilities, you want to leave family protection trusts are no-brainers. We do them for the vast majority of our clients. You do not have to be high net worth or ultra high net worth to justify it. If you have a child or a grandchild, you just had a child and you know they have a disability, and we have a lot of clients who come to us, they have a newborn or child who's 2 or 3 years old, and they already know that they have a disability and they want to plan ahead. You need to create a special needs trust. Do not leave money directly to that child. So level a third way. If you have a child with a disability, leave assets to a special needs trust. That is absolutely crucial. It's a way to protect that child and make sure a third party oversees the assets for that child. So no bad parties can manipulate them. And most importantly, the money in a special needs trust doesn't prevent them from getting needs-based government benefits like SSI or Medi-Cal. And we have a lot of other webinars on our Gilfix Law YouTube channel about special needs trusts. So crucial tools. Now I want to also talk about Crummey trusts. So if you're higher net worth and you're worried about your own estate taxes down the road, and we're going to talk about Crummey trusts a little bit more in other videos in here, but there's a really cool way where every year, you may not know, there's a $17,000 annual exemption. It used to be $15,000. It goes up with inflation. You can give $17,000 a year to as many people as you want without even reporting it to the IRS. So for a married couple, it's $34,000 to as many people as you want. There's a nice tip right there. Don't have to tell the IRS. There's no taxes owed, either for the person giving it or the person receiving it. You might want to do that for your child, especially if you have a larger estate. You want to start transferring money out of your estate if you're worried about taxes in the future. Well, you could give it directly to your child, but then they get control of it when they're 18 or 19. Bad idea. How can you protect your child until they're 25 or 30? A Crummey trust. It's a specially designed trust for the $17,000 annual exemption. It's a beautiful way to transfer money in a tax-free way for the benefit of your child without them getting access to it at the age of 18, which is a really bad idea in most cases. Of course, there's other financial planning issues we want to be aware of. You want to make sure that you've talked to your financial advisor. And I talked about this earlier. If you have a new child as well, you want to revisit your financial plan, but you also need to make sure that your beneficiary designations are up to date. So if you have a retirement plan, most of us have retirement plan through our work, or maybe you have life insurance. Maybe you didn't buy a separate policy, but you might have that through your employer. Well, if you have a child or a second child, you need to update your beneficiary designations as well to make sure, like for retirement plans, life insurance, often people set those up when they're young. Maybe they name their spouse, and if their spouse isn't around, they name a sibling. And they forget to update it when they have a child. So you need to make sure that your beneficiary designations are up to date as well. So whenever you're revisiting your financial plan, and ideally if you're working with a team of legal and financial planners who work together, and again, we're working on building that, they can all coordinate and make sure everything's updated in one fell swoop. So if you just had a kid, remember, you need to set up your own plan. You need to think about how you're leaving assets for your child more than just directly to them. We need to revisit your financial plan, your beneficiary designations. And then, of course, we want to think about multi-generational planning issues as well. So we need to make sure, step one, though, if you haven't done it, set up your estate plan. Of course, we can help you. Gilfix.com, very easy to find us. So anything you'd add there, Mike, before we move on?
No, I'm just eager to talk about this kind of planning from the grandparents' perspective.
Excellent. So if you just had a kid, or you just had a second kid and you haven't addressed your planning, or if you know somebody who needs to see this, send this to them. You need to have that plan. You need to have the guardian nomination, updated financial plan, updated beneficiary designations, and we, of course, can help. So, but you need to get that into place. Don't wait. Don't let things happen to you. Okay, now we're gonna share the next section of our talk. Mike, why don't you lead us through this?
So now let's assume that you're a grandparent. You just had that first, maybe the second, maybe the third grandchild. What should you be thinking about? What's the checklist? What are the issues to think about? First, let's say, it's a grandchild. That kid is perfect, right? I mean, the kids aren't, but the grandkids are. So, kind of, yeah, but we don't want to fall into that trap of thinking, well, this kid at age 18, here's Miles. At age 18, no doubt he's going to be able to manage money. I mean, who knows? Great kid, but who knows? So we want to be a little bit circumspect. We want to plan protectively. We want to set things up in a very wise, protective way. So some of what I'm going to talk about, it's the same issues that a parent should think about, but I think we grandparents have a different perspective on this. So let's take a look and go through some of the issues and the opportunities that we have. First of all, we all have an estate plan. I'm sure we do. You need to make sure that your documents are up to date. You have a new family member. You may want to provide for some direct distribution for the benefit of that child, thinking protectively about it being in a trust, thinking through the age at which that child gets access to that money, if ever. Is it for education? Is it for health? What are the objectives? So you review your plan, you think about whether or not you want to do something very proactive on behalf of that newborn. To some extent, you're coordinating that with your kid, the parents of that child. If they have a lot of money, it's one thing. If they have very little money, it's another. So again, every situation is different. What makes sense in your family situation? We don't know till we talk with you. But again, don't look at it generically. Think about it in terms of your family and what the needs are. First of all, is your trust up to date? Does it say the right things? If you haven't looked at it in a few years, even if you didn't just have a grandchild, it's very likely it's out of date in some way. So you need to review that anyway. But again, here's let's call it the springboard, the opportunity, the motivation to get together with us or the attorney of your choice and take a fresh look at things and make sure that it all makes sense. You have a retirement plan. You have a 401k, a 403b, whatever it is. Who are the beneficiaries? Did you say that if you leave it to your kids, that the grandkids step in at some point if, God forbid, one of our children should predecease us? Have you taken those logical steps? Do you have life insurance? Who's the beneficiary? Has that been integrated with your overall tax and estate plan? We want to be circumspect. We want to think about this multi-generationally. How does it fit, not just for my kids, but for my grandkids as well? So again, it's a motivation and it's an opportunity. Now, creating family protection trust for our kids, in a very real sense, that is planning primarily for the grandkid. That's for the grandkid. Now, why do I say that? When you leave assets to a child in this type of a trust, remember, assets in that trust are protected and will stay with your child in the event that he or she ever endures a divorce. It's like doing a prenup or a postnup for that child. And that means that the money is ultimately going to be there for your grandchild. What if your child is sued? If money is in this family protection or dynasty trust, that child's assets in that trust are going to be protected. Again, ultimately there for the grandchild. If your child inherits that money directly and is sued, that money could evaporate if that child is unsuccessful in defending a lawsuit. So again, we're thinking about the next generation. Tax is the big one. If you leave assets directly to your child, those assets are part of your child's estate. If they're smart and lucky, their estate grows. When they pass away, all that money is exposed to the estate tax. The current level of estate tax is very high. It's about $12.92 million per person.
For estate tax protection.
Pardon me, Mark?
Estate tax protection. The estate tax is very high if you're over that limit. So we have a lot of protection right now.
Yeah, that's the level of protection. So in 2026, and this is a vitally important point, the level of protection is going to drop to about $6.5 million per person. Still a lot, but if we just happen to own a home in this area and have a retirement plan, I mean, that could put you at $7-8 million, whether you like it or not, whether you feel rich or not. Just living here means that we have a larger estate. It comes with the territory. So When we are planning like this, we leave assets in our child's in this trust for our child. That money is there, it grows without limit, and passes to the grandchildren without exposure to estate tax. In some cases, this saves hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. So it's a logical step you would take for your kids, but it's for the grandkids in a very real sense. So set up those generational, called generation skipping, dynasty trust, be wise, be multi-generational. What else can we think about doing? Oh, there's so much. All right. 529 plans. These, as you probably know, are education plans. They're fine. There are some limitations, and we prefer Crummey Trust for reasons I'll go through here as I proceed. With a 529 plan, it's another way of using that annual exclusion and sometimes more. You can put up to $17,000 a year into a 529 plan, which means that the money in that account grows without exposure to it. It's a tax advantaged plan. The money is not exposed to tax, which is really good. It does have to be used only for education. In most states, it's only higher education. In California, we have a bit more flexibility. You can even use it here for homeschooling, for the cost of homeschooling with limitations. But the point is, it's for education. And one of the concerns we have is that what if your child doesn't use it up, doesn't go to college? You never know. It can be used for trade school, but what if they don't? You need to know what the options are. And there are options. A 529 plan can be rolled over to a Roth IRA, can be rolled over into what's called into a special account if a child happens to be disabled. So there are opportunities there. But why do we think the Crummey Trust is better? So let me tell you what a Crummey Trust is. This is a trust that is created typically for the benefit of a grandchild or a child, to let the grandparents and anyone else take advantage of the $17,000 annual exclusion. This is the amount of money you can give away and not have to report it to the IRS. It doesn't erode your lifetime level of estate and gift tax protection. So a married couple, grandma and grandpa can put away $34,000 a year for each grandchild in a Crummey Trust. There would be one Crummey Trust for each grandchild. And there's a creative number of steps you have to take to make this work. Won't go through that right now. Just trust us that it works. Now, one of the main reasons I prefer Crummey Trust for the benefit of a grandchild, as opposed to the 529 plan, is the money can be used for education, but it can also be used for health. It can be used for housing. You don't have that limitation. You can use it to pay room and board when a child is at school. So again, much greater flexibility with regard to the use of the money. Now, it's not tax advantaged, but it's always a trade-off. Tax advantages, that's just one factor. We want to take a comprehensive look at what the probable needs of a grandchild will be. The other thing is, while the 529 plan, you kind of age out when you're done with education, that's it. Then you got to do something with any money remaining. With a Crummey Trust, you can have that trust remain in place, holding money till the grandchild is 30, 35, 40, the age of your choice. You'd probably have your child, the parent of the grandchild, be the trustee of that trust. So again, tremendously flexible. We favor it in most circumstances.
So
by the way, we don't want to use Uniform Transfer to Minors Act accounts. That's where you put money into an account for a kid. Very attractive. It's so simple. But that kid gets the money at age 18 or maybe 21 at the most. Not usually a good idea. I mean, if it's a very small amount, don't worry about it. But if it builds up, that can be downright destructive. The child can just waste that money. So, we want to be a little bit protective. We want to be careful. So we discourage the use of Uniform Transfer to Minors Act accounts. Look at Crummey Trust. 529 plans are, of course, okay. Many opportunities here. And by the way, enjoy that grandkid. I mean, there's the best advice.
Yeah, and I want to spend just a moment going back through, we talked about family protection trust. So Mike just talked about Crummey Trust, which is a way to use the $17,000 annual exemption, tax-free to give. So it is tax advantage in the sense you don't have to report any gift or estate taxes that you're using up your exemption. But money in a Crummey Trust, as it grows, you do have to pay income tax on that. But you can protect it, as Mike said, forever, or at least till a kid is 25, 35, or the age of your choice. But I wanted to spend a moment on what we touched on this before, but family protection trust. So if you're a grandparent you need to set this up if you want to protect. So Mike talked about this, but I just want to spend a moment because there's a lot in the media. Mike just authored an article in Bottom Line Personal about these trusts. We should probably have that instead of the Wall Street Journal here. But why I want to spend just a moment, because this is so crucial. If you have a new child, or especially if you have a new grandchild and you want to leave assets protected for them for multiple generations. So why would you leave assets again to a family protection trust rather than to a child directly? Well, if you leave money to your child directly, and they get divorced, if they've commingled it, a big chunk could be lost to their ex-spouse. If it's in a family protection trust, it should be protected. It should not be lost in a divorce settlement. If your child is sued and they inherit money directly, fair game. There's no protection for those assets. If it's in a family protection trust, there's a barrier. There's a high level of protection against potential litigants. Most lawsuits end up settling out of court, and they settle for a lot less if they see a protective trust that they'd have to break to get through. Three, really powerfully, as Mike alluded to, if you have even if you don't consider yourself to have a larger estate, think of when you leave it to your kids, if they invest it well and it doubles or triples during their life, the assets could grow dramatically, especially if they're protected from divorce and lawsuits. If you leave it to them directly, it could be subject to estate taxes. Millions could be lost. If it's in a family protection trust, all or most, depending on some limits, should go to your grandkids estate tax free. And if you allow it, your child can be their own trustee. They can be in charge of it. So it's not like you're tying your kids' hands forever. Now, if they're younger, for grandkids, you can always set up these trusts as well. And you can put age restrictions where someone else is in charge of it for them until they reach the age that you choose. And really importantly, these trusts continue through the lives of your children and your grandchildren, and even part of the lives of your great-grandchildren. So that's why we love these trusts for grandparents. So I just want to summarize. If you have new grandkids, we need to make sure, of course, Mike talked about 529 plans. We touched on this. If you have a new grandchild with a disability, you need to think about, you have to set up a special needs trust. Either your kids need to set it up for that child, or you as a grandparent can even set up that special needs trust and coordinate planning with your kids. So anything they leave can go to the same special needs trust you set up for your grandchild as well. It doesn't have to be mom and dad set one up and grandma and grandpa do. Either party can set one up, and everybody needs to direct assets to that. You can also pay for medical or educational expenses directly, right, Mike? That's a tax efficient way to help out.
Let's take a moment of emphasis on that. Many of us, you may want your grandchild to go to a private school, for example, whatever that school may be. You can pay the tuition and you don't have to report that to the IRS. It doesn't erode your lifetime gift and estate tax protection. So you think about paying tuition for anybody and medical bills directly for anybody, along with the use of the $17,000 annual exclusion to support someone without incurring any potential tax limitations or tax penalties. So very smart to think about that. Not a lot of money sometimes, but it has a huge impact, and it helps your kids out if you're paying some of the cost of living that could be huge for medical bills or tuition for a grandchild.
Amazing. So there you have it. If you have a new grandchild, you need to revisit your plan. You need to make sure that you have the right backup trustees and that you're including your grandchildren the right way in case, God forbid, one of your kids predeceases you, or if you just want to help them out directly. And we talked about how you can protect assets for your grandkids. Don't leave assets to your kids directly. Create family protection trust, our version of dynasty trust. Of course, if there's a special needs issue, you need to create a special needs trust, or at least make sure that anything you leave to your grandchildren goes to a special needs trust that maybe their parents set up. And then Mike talked about Crummey Trust, a way to give $17,000 a year tax-free and protect it until they're 25 or 30 for any purpose. Mike talked about 529 plans and making sure it's all brought together. So it's a good excuse to meet with your financial advisor and, of course, your estate planner. And we can, of course, help you with that. We've helped out thousands of grandparents with this type of planning. So for grandparents out there, I hope this was helpful. Share this with anybody you know if that's useful. We have a couple more topics we're going to go through, but share this. I hope it's useful. And let's go on to our next topic here, which will be financial planning consideration. So did you just have a new child, or did you have a new grandchild? And are you concerned about coordinating your legal and financial plan? Now, we are not financial advisors. This is meant to be purely educational. We are developing some relationships with some great advisors. Some of the key steps that you have to take. Well, if you have a new child or a new grandchild, whether you have a kid before or this is your first, you need, of course, to update your core estate plan. You need to make sure you have a living trust in place, your own durable powers of attorney, your own advance directive. You need to make sure you have guardian nominations. But then we have to look at your financial plan and how you're thinking about that, because it's very different if you are just supporting yourself and thinking about that versus if you want to leave something for your kids or your grandkids and you want to support them. We've talked about this before, but in this new age of artificial intelligence, a lot of people are terrified about, how am I going to keep my job? How's my kid going to have a job when computers take over everything, when artificial intelligence is taking over 90% of the tasks that humans currently do? I don't think it's going to happen that quickly. We have to be aware of it. So does that mean you want to leave more for the benefit of your child to make sure they at least have a roof over their head and some support? That's especially crucial if you have a child or a grandchild with special needs. We really need to make sure there's not only enough to support you and that you're covered, but there's enough to support your grandchild or your child who can't maybe obtain a job themselves or support themselves after you're gone. So you have to rethink your financial plan and really think about this and make sure that the projections you have are still up to date. Life insurance can be a crucial tool. If you're worried about a gap, many of our clients have looked at life insurance, or some experts we work with in the life insurance field who can help with that. But especially when you feel like there's a gap, like I have a certain amount of money, but I don't think it's going to be enough to support my daughter who is on the autism spectrum, or I just want to make sure that my child can afford a home, if nothing else, and I'm not sure I have enough. Life insurance can help fill that gap. Aside from that, so you need to rethink your financial plan, look at projections, rethink that, look at how life insurance or other financial products can fill those gaps. You have to make sure your beneficiary designations are up to date. I know it sounds it's almost like an afterthought in many cases, but if you don't take a fresh look every time you have a new child or a new grandchild, you need to look at the beneficiary designations for your retirement accounts, 401k, your IRA, Roth IRA, your life insurance policy. You might have life insurance through your work. You might not know about it. So typically you name your spouse first, but if something happens to your spouse, where does it go? And that's where we have to make sure that you name your new child, your new grandchild, or better yet, you create protective trust for them, a family protection trust or a dynasty trust for your child, a special needs trust if that's in place. So it's really crucial that we don't just say, okay, well, I have a new child. I have a trust. It says assets are going to them. We need to rethink how that fits with your financial plan. And we're building some tools and building some partnerships around that. So we encourage you to talk to us if you're concerned about it. But, regardless whether work with us or the networks we're building or your own financial advisor, everybody needs to talk together. It's a great excuse. When you have a new child or a new grandchild, that is a decision point, and that is a point where you need to meet as a team. Mike.
Yeah, and again, from the older perspective, one criticism we've had forever about financial planning is that they fail to be objective and realistic about what aging means. So just a moment on that. So do we want to get long-term care insurance? Does that make sense? Are we really aware of, for example, the fact that 70% of us over the age of 65 will need some form of expensive long-term care? Has that really been integrated into our thinking? And if so, how? And are we using the correct tools in that world of financial planning? So I've rethought many of these things. So again, I'm living and breathing these issues. So I can tell you the traditional financial advising approach assumes kind of vanilla that you have standard needs. That's not reality. Reality is you're an individual. You need to sit down, and again, we really started the relationship. We'll share that name with Natalie, who is looking for someone to really take that comprehensive multi-generational look that's objective, and it's really a new way of looking at things, updating it.
Absolutely. You may want to get a second opinion on all that too. And if you have a great advisor, keep working with them, meet with your existing advisors. If you feel great about them, bring them in with a meeting with your attorney. Hopefully we can help you with your legal planning and making sure this is all integrated. And if you don't have that team, when you have a child or a new grandchild, it's time to build that team, that legal advisory team, that team that hopefully be around with you and your family for decades, and that financial advisory team that you feel really good about. So you can make sure that your insurance planning is up to, does your financial advisor, are they familiar with insurance options? Or annuities are not always a good thing, but in some cases they can be. And of course, traditional investing in stocks and bonds and all that. Again, this is for educational purposes. We are not financial advisors, but we want you to think about this. It's a good excuse to meet with that team, bring it together, make sure that everything's coordinated, that your non-retirement accounts are properly titled in your living trust, that your trust is up to date, that your power of attorney document addresses tax planning and long-term care planning. If you're out of it, have you empowered someone to take steps to protect your assets for your kids and your grandkids? Your power of attorney is key. So making sure you don't just have very basic estate planning documents, but making sure that your legal and your financial planning are both updated when you have that kid. So great excuse. There are moments in life where taking a few actions can have a high leverage impact, an extraordinary asymmetrical impact on your and your children's financial futures. So whenever you have someone new in your family, grandchild or child, set that meeting, build that team. And we can, of course, be a part of it. You can find us at gilfix.com, gilfix.com. And any thoughts for you, Mike, before we wrap up and give you some action items that you can take?
Well, couple of quick things. I mean, if anyone would like to get a copy of that February 2023 article that I had in Bottom Line Magazine about dynasty trusts, we'll be happy to send it to you.
Contact
Just give
us.
us your email address and your name, and we'll do that. And we have 3 books. One of them is on estate tax planning, one is on special needs, one is on long-term care. So just to be aware that we have a wealth of publications, and there's that Gilfix Law YouTube channel where this will be posted, and many, many others. So it's an invitation to register for the channel. It's all free. We think it's pretty good. We know it's very good. So it's a wealth of information that's accessible to everyone.
Yes. So I think the key thing is how do you take action? So we would love to get the chance to help you. So if you want to take action, of course, meet with us. You can reach us at gilfix.com. But we've helped thousands of California families. But even if you don't work with us, you need to work with an expert. Don't work with someone who dabbles in estate planning. Don't touch online. When you have kids, grandkids, don't touch online planning documents. I'm sorry, if you don't have kids, maybe it's okay, the basics. When there's future generations involved, you need expert help, and don't wait. I want you to take a moment to imagine what might happen if you don't plan, if you don't update your trust or don't have a trust. Your assets can be stuck in the courts. Your assets can be stuck in the courts for 2 or 3 years before it goes to your kids. Your kids might get things at the age of 18. It might not go to your kids at all because maybe you didn't update your beneficiary designations. Imagine if you plan ahead and what we can accomplish. You can protect so much for your kids and grandkids in a very uncertain world. And this is a high leverage moment. So when you make the right steps now, a few actions can have a huge impact on your future. So of course, take action. You can contact us. It's easy to find us, gilfix.com, 650-493-8070. You can join our large and growing client community. We serve people throughout the state of California, anywhere from San Diego to Wairika. And of course, subscribe to our Gilfix Law YouTube channel for more free legal educational videos. And if you have a comment or a question, if you're watching this as a recording, leave that comment, leave that question. We'll try to get back to you. What is your biggest hope for the next generation? Leave that as a comment. What is your biggest concern? What is your biggest question about all this? Leave that as a comment, and we're happy to address those. So we're going to take just a couple of questions, but I thank you so much for attending. This has been, it's something that we feel very strongly about. Easy to contact us if you want. If you're an existing client and you just had a child or a grandchild, set that meeting with us. We'll work with you. Share this with anybody who needs to hear this, who needs to understand. So you have someone in your life who just had a child, share this with them. If you have someone in your life who just had a grandchild, share this with them. So we would, it's so crucial to share this information. Our goal is to empower and educate. So share this video if it's useful to you or anybody in your family or your circle. Spread the word. We would, of course, love to get the chance to help them, but we want everybody to have a plan in place. Make sure things are coordinated. So we're going to take just a couple questions before we wrap things up. Mike, any question that you wanted to take?
Yeah, one is it's kind of from the grandparents' perspective. Should we consider leaving money directly to our grandchild rather than to our kids? Because our plan was to leave everything to the kids. Well, I think it depends on the individual circumstances. If your child is very poor or very wealthy, that might swing you one direction or the other. You might want to take care of the cost of education for the grandchild. And that's I would say a responsibility we bear, but it's an opportunity that we have. Again, that's the 529 plan, or that's the Crummey trust. So it isn't either or. It's a matter of coordinating how you want to distribute any assets that remain at your passing, or the way in which you might want to distribute some assets now. And if you do want to distribute some now, you just want to be tax smart. There's really plenty of opportunities to do this in a tax painless way. In fact, it's proactively positive to take some of these steps from a tax perspective.
Yeah, and actually one thing we didn't talk, if you watch our YouTube channel or watch our presentations, you know that if you live in California, you want to leave a house to your kids or your grandkids, you need to be aware of Prop 19 and property tax issues. If you had a house for a long time, property taxes could spike by 1,000, 5,000%. We've seen this happen, literally not 50%, not 100%, 5,000% or more, like 10 times or more, insane increases. And we have tools to prevent that. We can plan. So contact us at gilfix.com if you have questions about that. But we can protect your house for future generations. And that's so crucial as we look to an uncertain world and very high housing costs, really for everybody throughout the state of California. So I think on that note, we'll wrap it up. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Again, spread the word. This will be on our Gilfix Law YouTube channel if it's not already. Share this with anybody who you think needs to see this. And of course, contact us if we can be of service to you. So thank you so much for attending. As my mom likes to say, I hope everybody stays safe, sane, and healthy. Mike, any final thoughts from you?
I think those are wonderful parting words, and we're kind of celebrating a new birth here. So, I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful topic we had today.
Absolutely. Well, I hope everybody's well. We'll talk soon.